Hey everyone, Steph here. In today's real-world Power Apps demonstration, Superfloof and I are going to step you through how to create an employee recognition app. I'm going to do this in 3 videos for ease of consumption. The first video will be setting up the form that you see here with the success screen. The second part will be taking a SharePoint multiple choice column and turning it into the multi-select checkboxes that you see here that are required. And the third part will be the notification emails that get sent out after. The nice thing about the notification emails is that we're taking the cultural belief or the prop that the employee was recognized for, adding graphics, customizing the colors, and leveraging HTML. You're going to want to stick around for all 3. I'll put the links in my description after I get them all done. Please remember to subscribe and you'll know about them first. Here we go. As always, let's start with the finished product first. This employee recognition app has a SharePoint list for its data set. The first field that we're asking the employee to fill out is a multi-select people picker. So we're going to select Tony, and then we're going to add Kate as well. And this is what led us to the second part of the requirement. The client wasn't sure that employees would understand that they needed to select outside of the box to move on to the form. So instead of doing another multi-select choice field for the props value demonstrated, instead we're leveraging galleries to make it dynamic. Plus, we're going to make it required. That's going to be video 2. So let's describe their actions after I select a value. Their initiative. You came up with a great plan. Then we hit submit. Takes us to a recognition screen. A recognition or an acknowledgement screen is always a very good idea, so you don't have employees submitting multiples because they're not sure if the first one went through. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of how we create this Power App. First, we're going to need to go to my desktop and make.powerapps.com. Here we are at make.powerapps.com. We're going to select a blank app and a blank canvas app. Click Create. Because I'm not creative when it comes to naming conventions, I'm just going to call it Props2, take the default of a tablet format and hit Create. While this is creating, let's look at our data source. We have a SharePoint list on the back end. We have a title field, which is by default required in any SharePoint list. Here you see I do have things populated. I find best practice is to have this populate with something that'll help you find the records in the future if you have to go back and look for them. We have a multi-select choice field that in a second video, hit subscribe and you'll get notified about it. We're going to turn a multi-select choice drop-down into checkboxes, required checkboxes. We have a multi-line text area for describing their actions, and then a multi-select people picker for who we want to recognize. Back to Power Apps, it should have finished by now. The first thing that we want to do is connect our app to the data source. So if we come over here and expand this out, it'll give us a little bit more information, but it also takes up screen real estate. So I tend to keep this collapsed, but we're going to select data. Now what sort of data are we going to connect to? We need to click Add Data, and I'm going to type in SharePoint. As you saw, it filtered the list. I'm going to scroll down to SharePoint and select a connector. What is connecting the app to the SharePoint list? I'm going to leverage my connector that I've already used. And then this is what I kind of call Power Apps calisthenics. It takes you from the left side of the screen to the right and back and forth. But here we are on the right side of the screen, and you can either paste in the URL of the site that you're looking for, or you can select from a dynamic list that shows you your recent sites. I'm going to select the site and then the list that has my data and hit connect. Now visually, not much has happened. Here in the data, we have a new connection. We're going to take it back to tree view and collapse this so we have more real estate. The first thing we're going to do is insert, and I'm going to start typing form. You see here how we only have edit form and display form. Edit form is what we're going to select, and it's generally the best practice to take this one because you can always restrict down to a display form. But if you start with the display form, it can be buggy when you try and take it up to a newer edit form in the future. So I'm going to say an edit form. Now it's added it. Now I have to go back to the right side of the screen and add the data source. What data source? I'm going to add the list that we talked about before. Now the nice thing about doing it this way, using forms, is that it'll pre-populate the form for you. So it gives you a starting place. Now that we have the form, we don't need attachments. I can just select the data card, hit delete on my keyboard. Manager nominee, we're going to use in a later video, don't need it for now, so I'm going to again delete that. Sorry, I had to cough. By default, forms are created with snap to columns turned on and the column count set to 3. For this app, we only need 1 column, so I'm going to change that to 1, and then I'm going to turn snap to columns off. We don't need it anymore. Let's set the title card. Once you select the title card, you'll notice there's a little lock there. That indicates that it is still tied exactly to the SharePoint list. So I'm going to come over here to the Advanced tab, click Unlock to change. Now, as I said before, we're not using this, but we want to have it be something useful. So if I click on the data card value here, click on it, you'll see here at the top, default is set to parent.default. Now that means that if this form is pulled up in an edit mode, it's going to give us the parent.default, the value from the SharePoint list. What we're going to do is change that. So I'm going to cut that out and I'm going to add some logic. You'll notice as I start typing, SharePoint is helping me, Power Apps is helping me create the formula. So what we're saying here is if the data coming from SharePoint is blank, then what do we want to do? We want to populate it, and this is my best practice, whatever works best for your organization. I'm going to add the person filling out the form, their full name, then we're going to add some text. Oop, I added one too many in there. And then today's date. Again, useful information that'll help you find the record if you need it in the future. And then I'm going to add parent.default and close out the code. So if we click in here, we can see what is going on. So we have a logic, an if statement. If this is blank, so if we're not pulling anything from SharePoint, and you can see here when you select it, it shows you that it's true, then fill out this with the person filling out the form and the date. And if it's not, then pull from SharePoint. Just pretty basic information. Again, you could customize this for whatever you want. Now that we have this filled out, we don't need it anymore, we can get rid of it. The next thing, if you recall from our demo, is we have who do you want to recognize? Select a colleague or colleagues. So if we pull that off to the side, where is that? Who do you wish to recognize? These aren't quite in the order that we want, and there are multiple ways to change things. I can click on the card and then drag it to the top like this. Control Z works, so I can Control Z and undo it. I can open up the edit for the field for the card. I can click and drag the card itself to the top as well. Multiple ways of doing things. So now we need to unlock the card just like we did for title. Unlock to change. Now, who do you wish to recognize? The text is correct, but find items is incredibly unhelpful. That doesn't really indicate that this is a people picker and this is a multi-choice column. If I hold the Alt key on my keyboard, I can preview the app and play it. If I click the drop arrow, I get nothing here. If I click the drop arrow here, I get the props. Let's make this a little more user-friendly. If I select the data card within the value, come to the right side, and we come down to here to Input Text Placeholder, I can change this to whatever I want. So I'm going to make this select a colleague or colleagues. Useful information for the end user to remove any possibility of confusion so they get you the information you want. This is a little small, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to come in and change the font's size. Well, I can't, unfortunately, as of today. Now check back with me tomorrow because Microsoft may have changed things, but I can't change fonts within multiple cards. I can't come down here and select this text and then come here and select this text. It won't let you do things in between cards. However, within this card, who do you wish to recognize? I'm going to take the star, which isn't visible yet. I'm going to take the data card and the data card key, that's the text, and we're going to change that to 16. Everything got a little bigger. We're getting closer now. Next thing we want to have is the props demonstrated. Click the star, click the data card key, and we're going to change the font size to 16. We're not going to make this a checkbox in this video, subscribe, and we'll do that in the next video. But we still want to make this something a little bit useful, just in case, right? So we remember where we were. So we come to the Advanced tab for the data card value, and we can change this to something as well. Select one or many. Now you'll notice I have not done anything with the describe their actions box yet. That's on purpose. This is a multi-line box, but it looks just like the other ones, right? It's kind of small. If we select the properties for the form, go into the fields, describe their action, we expand this. Right now it's just edit text. But here within edit text, we can select other items. We can edit multi-line text, or we could edit rich text. What does this look like? Give it a minute and we wait. And you see here, now that I've changed it, I could do bold, underline, italics. Don't really need it for this. We just want the meat and potatoes of what this person has done. So I'm going to change it to an edit multi-line text and close out. Now I'm going to come in and unlock this data card as well, because I still want to give people a little bit more room. I'm also going to, just like the other ones, come over here and select the items and change the font to 16. So everything within the app is consistent. Give users a little bit more room here. We're going to select this text box, come down here to height. Now I could just click in here and change this to 125 and hit enter, and it would automatically make it bigger for me. I can also select the word height, and that will automatically populate up here, and I could change this to 135. Now if I hit enter here, you see it gives me a hard return. This user interface is a little more finicky and gives you more options than using this down here. Depends on which way you want to go with what you want to do. So I really like to handhold end users. So in our actual app, we have placeholder text in here too. It's called hint text. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come back to our app, go to the Advanced tab, come in here to hint text, and I'm going to paste the hint text in there. So what this does is if I hit play, I get nothing. Why did I get nothing? I close out of this, close out of the error box. I got nothing because the form type, the default mode, is set to edit. We want this form to be a new form. So now if I play it, I change it to new, and now if I play it, now I see the form. First rule of Power Apps is my same first rule as SharePoint. Don't panic. You can always figure it out. Just don't panic. Don't start deleting things. Just think through your problem. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting a little bit more traction. Now let's make all of the fields required. If you recall, I said that we couldn't make changes in bulk to fonts across data cards. But for certain settings that are universal to the data cards, we can make bulk updates. Here's the trick. You select one of the cards in the tree view menu, hold the shift key down, select another one of those cards. You'll notice it unselected the first one. That's normal behavior. We just have to go back and select it again, and then select the last one for this example. Now we go over to the Advanced tab, and we change the required setting from false to true. Now all the fields are required. Let's add a submit button. After selecting the form, we click on Properties, Edit Fields. From here we select the ellipsis, add a custom card. This adds another working area within the form for us at the bottom, which is where we want it. And you'll notice now we have a scroll bar. It automatically adds or removes scroll bars as you need them dynamically. We really don't need it to be this large, however, so let's select the data card, change the height from 200 to 100. Now on the Insert menu, we insert a button. Move that to the center, and let's change the text from button to submit. And following best practices, you want to get in habit patterns, and this is a good habit pattern to get into. Once you make a change to a custom item like this, immediately go to the top of the screen or the tree view and update the name. So for button 3, I follow the naming convention of BTN for button, and then camel case, submit, to what the button is doing or what the text box is doing. Again, do it however you like, but be consistent. We could have also come over here to button 3 in the tree view, double-clicked it, and changed the name as well. Now that we have the button, what do we want to do with it? How does it do its thing, right? How do we tell it to submit or take this data and pass it to SharePoint? Once the button is selected, we go over here to On Action or Advanced tab and select the OnSelect function. This is when you select it, right? What are we doing? When we're clicking on the button, the OnSelect function, we are going to submit the form. Again, as we type, SharePoint helps me out with this. Now, we have to do one more step, because from our demo, once we fill out the form and hit submit, it takes us to a success screen. Let's do that one more time here. Add this to Tony. It's a new perspective. We'll just do some text in here because I'm not creative. Hit submit. It takes us to another screen to show the end user that something has happened, that this has been received. So on the on form action, the on success, we want to click there. And on success, what do we want to do? We want to navigate. Navigate to where though? We haven't created another screen. Plus you'll see here, this screen is still called screen 1. Not following best practices here. So let's, in the tree view, click on the name of the screen. I'm going to call this screen main. How do we add another screen? Now that we have selected screen main and we go to insert, there's no option to do a screen, but look right here on the ribbon, new screen. And Power Apps is giving us options. We can do different things here, success screens, blank screens, tutorials, all sorts of options. But for this one, we're going to keep it, blank. Now that we've created the screen on the tree view, we need to rename it. So I'm going to double click here and name it Screen Success. Now I already uploaded the image from before. So I select the image and it popped it into the window for us. I can click and drag and just stretch it across the screen. We could have also come here, made X0, Y0, change the width. Right now it's 1366. Parent.width, height. Do we need to do this on an app that is only for this use case going to be done on a computer? No. But more and more we're seeing apps that need to be cross-browser responsive. Fill-outable on a cell phone example is an example. Getting in this practice will help you get used to that and set you up to succeed long term. So we have the picture in the background. Let's also, from the other app, grab some text and a background. So I'll paste it in here and then we can talk about it. What do we have here? If we minimize the screen main, we have following naming practices, right? A label, success message 1. Your props has been successfully submitted. We have a rectangle to give it some definition. And then from our images, I'm going to plop this image again. Just reiterating core values. Now, back to our tree view and let's rename that. That's going to be image props. And this is image background. What happened? The image is gone. First rule of Power Apps, first rule of SharePoint, don't panic. This happens a lot, happens almost every time to me. And the way to get around that is either to go to a different screen and come back, but you can also just come up here to the image and retype part of the name. And it will refresh itself. And you see image is gone too. There's that one back. Now let's think through this like a user, right? They've submitted a prop. Now what? I tend to give them a way to get back to the main screen. So let's add a cancel button or a close button. So we can come up here and we can go to icons, right? So I could expand the icon menu and then scroll and then scroll and then scroll. There's a lot of icons in here, but you could also filter by typing. So insert, cancel. There we have it. Insert it, bring it over here to the side, rename it, again, just getting in good habit patterns. Now what happens when somebody hits the cancel button? What activity do we want to have happen here? Well, what we want to do is go to the Advanced tab and go to the OnSelect property. Here we're going to OnSelect, navigate to the screen main. This is why it's so important to name things. As you get going, you can get caught up in things and forget, but it's a good idea to get in the practice of doing this. As I hit comma, it's going to give me the help for the transition. Which transition are we going to do? We're going to do a cover. I like to do a cover left one way and then a cover the other way, just so we have some consistency. And then also, we're going to reset the form. If someone clicks this, we want to have the form set back to how it was to begin with. So now I can play the app, or I can hold the Alt key on the keyboard, and if I click the X, what does it do? It takes me right back to the main screen. But you see, we have an error. What is this error? If we click here, edit in the form, edit in the formula bar, this is where we left off before. Where are we navigating to when the form is successful? We're going to navigate to screen. Well, screen. Success. Sometimes the help isn't that good. And then we're going to cover the other way. We're going to cover right. So now when we hit submit and we have all the fields, nothing's going to happen. I hit play and got nothing. Why did I get nothing? If we go back to the Power App, remember, don't panic. It's not broken. I just forgot to change the default to new. Now if we play the app, now we have all of the fields. If I hit submit, it gives me errors. This is why we set everything to required. We want to force people to give us the data. So now we're going to test. I'm going to select Baron. I'm going to select a prop, one or many. I'm just grabbing one and test. You see, as I fill it out, the error text goes away. I hit submit and it takes us to the submit screen, the success screen. Now a user could hit the X and go back to the main screen and submit another one. You see how the form has reset itself. But wait, there's more. We have 2 more videos in this series. The first one, taking our props value and changing it from a drop-down to a required gallery with checkboxes. Then for the second video, we will cover the flow that sends out the dynamically generated props emails. Depending on what props was selected, we have different graphics as well as different colors. But for now, the Marvel post-credit scene, let's do this gradient that you see in the demo app. Now for our post-credit scene, we're going to leverage an HTML text box to give us the gradient background that we're looking for. I've already added it to the app and given it a width of the parent and a height of the parent. By default, HTML text boxes, which you'll find under the Insert menu, come with a padding of 5 all the way around. So we want to get rid of that. And then look at the HTML text. I've already entered some placeholder information for us, and you see it started to give us some content. I gave it a width of 100 pixels, a height of 100 pixels, and then I got the CSS code for the linear gradient from the interwebs. Back to the code. We need to give it the actual width and height of the app. Now we could manually plug in 1366 by 768, but we're not going to. The nice thing about HTML code is that we can leverage dynamic content from within our app on top of the code. So first we're going to close the HTML text. We're going to give it a pair of ampersands and then reopen the text. This is telling the app that we are going to dynamically give you something, and we're getting a false message now because we aren't giving the app anything. So we're going to give it a screen main.width. There we go. We're starting to see some progress. We're going to do the same thing for the height. You want to make sure you do leave the pixels in there, because when you pass it the number of the height, it's just a number. So screen main.height. There we have it, but not quite. Remember how we talked before how it'll dynamically give you a scroll bar if the content is large enough? Well, the content's large enough, and unfortunately we got a scroll bar, and that is not the look that we're going for. So we're going to take the screen height and subtract it by 1. Now we've got what we want. We take and click on the ellipsis next to the name, and we click reorder, send to back, and there we have the beginnings of our 3-part series.